Hello, today on my new channel, we're going to be cooking a chicken we raised and a rack of ribs we bought from the regular grocery store. I've already taken the membrane off and kind of sort of trimmed it. So today we're going to start the chicken first. We're going to use a binder as maple syrup, and we're going to use the rub as sweet pepper. So what you do is you pour the maple syrup on there first, start rubbing that in. Get a good coating of the sweet pepper on there. All the sides. And you can use any seasoning you want. We really like the sweet pepper. It gets a sweet taste. We think it really makes these birds taste pretty good. We'll get it all on there.
And this is one of our fresh raised birds that we raise ourselves.
And we'll be having that on our channel too. We'll teach people how to butcher chickens, other than probably the gruesome part, but all the other parts we'll put on here. We'll explain how we do the gruesome part. We do pretty humane how we do it. Well, that bird is done, so we'll move on to the ribs now. The ribs, I don't use any binder, and I just use the moisture of the ribs to hold the rub on. We use the Honey Hog. We really like this rub. My daughter loves it. She loves these ribs, and they are hit every time. And how I cook ribs is easy. I don't do the 2-3-1 or anything like that. I do two hours unwrapped, and I do 2 hours wrapped, and they come out just perfect every time. So we get a good coating on both sides. I do a little bit heavier on the meat side, on that heavier meat side. Now we're gonna go take them out. I don't like how that looks, so I'm gonna put a little bit more on there. Now we're gonna take these out to the smoker and put them on there. Okay, here we go. We got the Pit Boss pellet smoker. We have it preheated to 250 degrees. It's about where I like to smoke at. I think it gets everything pretty evenly done that way. We'll put the bird and the ribs on here at the same time. They should be roughly done at that temperature at the same time. But once you put these birds on, you want to try to get the wings put underneath them so they don't burn the wings so bad. The tips of the wings. You take your thermometer and you put it in one of the main part of the breasts. You want that bird to hit about 165 in about an hour or 30 minutes. We'll start basting this. We'll start basting it with maple syrup, and I'll really crisp up that skin. You'll see what I mean. If people always say when they smoke chickens, their skin is kind of rubbery. If you baste it with maple syrup, they'll be a lot more crisp. You'll see they'll turn kind of a nice golden brown color, and it'll be really good. You'll see. It's been about an hour. Now we're going to start basting the bird with some maple syrup. Try to get it kind of basted all over. Back there, trying to get all over it. good. So here in about 30 minutes, we'll be wrapping those ribs up. And we'll show you how to do that. All right, it's been 2 hours. Now we're about to wrap these ribs up. So what I usually do to start with that, I start with some brown sugar. We'll take a little bit, put it down for the meat side to lay down. We'll scoop some out with a deal so I don't get the sugar all messy when I pull the ribs out. And we do some honey. Do a pretty good dollop of that. I either use this type of butter or I use spreadable butter. That one's empty, so we'll go get some spreadable butter out. Kind of put a little bit more right there. Then we'll take some of the rub also and sprinkle it in there. Then we'll get the ribs pulled out, and they're pretty nice looking already. They're doing the bend test a little bit. So we'll put that meat side down. Now we do the same thing. Take powdered sugar we scooped out. We'll sprinkle that on top. We'll take some of this butter. Put a pretty good dollop there. And since I only use this butter for smoking, I'm not really worried about what I get in it. Put a little bit more seasoning on top of that. I'll take some of the honey. Kind of sprinkle it, kind of drizzle it back and forth on top. Is what I like to do. You can do however way you like it. Now that part's, the dirty part's done, the gloves can kind of come off. Take just a little bit of apple juice. I just pour probably just like maybe a third of a cup, maybe less than that, not very much. And how I use double foil, and how I wrap it, kind of like a almost like a you're wrapping up an envelope kind of. You want it where it can kind of almost breathe a little bit, but you can also check it during your cook if you want to. But usually I got this down pretty good. About 2 hours from now, those will be ready to go. Our chicken is going pretty good. I'm going to scoot it over a little bit. And we're going to rebaste that again while we're here. It's starting to really golden up. That skin's really starting to crisp up with the sugar and this maple syrup. Really will make it taste good. My daughter loves these, especially the chicken legs is her favorite part. Then we're cooking a whole meal on the smoker. So this whole meal of ours tonight will be on the smoker. We got ribs, chicken, and this is our side dish, is red potatoes with green beans. And how I did that, I sliced them up. I put a tablespoon of mixed garlic, some bacon bits, and a whole stick of cut up non-salted butter, and I sprinkled some all-purpose salt, pepper, garlic seasoning on there, and I'll let them go for an hour in the smoker before I wrap them. And the reason being for that, it keeps your green beans from really wrinkling it up. It keeps your green beans nice and firm looking. So we'll come back in another hour when we wrap up that. I'll show you how that's looking. And in 2 hours, the ribs will be done and the chicken should be done by then also. All right, it's been an hour for the potatoes and green beans. That's how it's gonna look. See how nice the chicken is looking, and the ribs are over here wrapped up. I think the green beans have plenty of smoke on them, so we're gonna wrap it so they'll get done. I just basted the chicken a minute ago, so we don't need to baste it again. But it's starting to look really nice and golden. We're going to come back in an hour, and all of it should be about done. It's been 4 hours. It's time to pull the ribs off. We're going to double check them. Chicken's looking good. She's just about done. Pull these ribs off. Kind of thing. We're going to open this up. That's why you fold it that way. You can see. Bones are really shaking up. We're going to let that rest for a minute. Wrap it back up. Put it right back over here. We're going to let those rest for about 15 minutes and let that chicken go back to cooking a little bit more. It's almost ready. It's been about 10 minutes since I pulled the ribs off. The chicken's pretty much done. We're going to pull it off. Let it rest. We're going to wrap it with foil and let it rest about for 10-15 minutes. You know, that, look how nice and pretty that turned out. Nice and golden brown. And the potatoes and green beans should be pretty close to being ready, if not ready themselves. The wrapping really speeds up the cooking process. Those are going to be great. It's an easy side to cook on the smoker. We're going to let those sit. We're going to shut the smoker and we're going to turn it off and let it do its thing to turn off. And we're going to go inside and wrap this up and let it rest. Okay, it's been a little bit. I can't wait any longer, so we're going to go ahead and get these ribs out, cut them up first. Foil out of the way. You always cut ribs with the bones facing up so you can see them. So we'll get a knife. Let it rest so they firm up a little bit so they're easier to cut. Cut these right off the smoker, they'll about fall apart. Now we'll flip those around. This is how they look when they're smoked. And they have a nice smoke ring here, and the glaze is really nice. And they're some of the tastiest ribs you'll eat. And it's a simple, easy recipe that I like doing because it keeps it simple. You don't have to do a bunch of waiting and hope you don't burn the ribs doing the other way. Now the chicken has been resting for a minute, so we can go ahead and cut it. How I usually like to do the chickens is I usually start on one side. I usually try to see how juicy that is. I usually try, and it's still pretty hot, so you got to be careful with it. I try to bring it over and try to get that whole, See that cut? And you have one thigh and leg over there. We'll do the other side while we're doing that. We'll get it cut loose. Pull it over a little bit so you can break that hip joint back there. Still really hot. Kind of just pull it off, and there you go. There's another thigh and leg. Put it right there. Now find the middle of your breastbone. Start cutting the breast off. And it's still really hot. Kind of pull it. Hear that skin kind of crisp, how crispy it was when I cut it. And still really hot. When you cut breasts, you always want to cut it kind of long ways. And they're really juicy. You can see the smoke got to it a little bit. You can see how juicy that is. Kind of cut it apart. There's one breast and two thighs. Try to do a better job cutting the breast off this side. Here's your other breast. There's one cut up breast. There's one whole breast I'll cut up here in a minute. And this is the side we did also on the smoker. All this was done. You just have to make sure you put stuff on the smoker certain times. The chicken and the ribs were put on the same time. This was put on the same time we wrapped the ribs. But your whole meal was done on the smoker and done around the same time. And you can tell some of the smoke got in the potatoes, but not all of them, but in some of them. And they're done. And the reason why we wrap it, because you want to try to keep the green beans looking like green beans. They started shriveling up a little bit. The smaller ones did. During that hour, we had it unwrapped. But if you wrap them up, they'll stay looking like a green bean, not a shriveled up. So that's that. And this is what we're going to be eating for dinner. And that wing just pops right off. Put it over there. That other wing just kind of pops right off.
And what will we do with the remainder of the carcass after we finish trimming off all the pieces?
We will be boiling it to make homemade either chicken noodle soup out of it, because I'll throw this in the freezer, or we'll boil it and make homemade chicken broth and we'll can it. Because we'll use that again and there'll be really good chicken broth out of it after I get the remainder of the meat off of it. But that is our smoked chicken and our smoked ribs. I call sweet ribs because I like sweet pork and I like sweet chicken. So this is very good and easy to make and very simple recipe to do. If you have any other questions, please write down a comment. If you want to see any details or anything else, there'll be a lot more stuff coming. And if you want to like and subscribe, all that helps our channel grow and we'll see you next time.